So what I'll do, as this is playing, I want to just read some of my, how we worked on this project is that I made several visits, driving around in the car with Monica and some of the residents, looking, observing, stopping by. Some of these areas took a long time to find. And I made some notes as I went along, and what I would do when I came back to England, I sent the notes to Monica, and she actually responded to these notes and some of the words and phrases that I used to make some works, which I'll show you. So as we have a look at this, I want to just kind of look at some of my entries into this diary. So day 2, Saturday, landscape. Expo area, Nations Park, Vasco da Gama shopping mall. Apparently many of the major shopping malls in Lisbon are named after colonial explorers and great men of discovery, such as Vasco da Gama. Extremely high tech. This is in note form, so it doesn't often read very well. Futuristic architecture, very much like Canary Wharf in London. These are poor neighbourhoods surrounding these islands. Sorry, there are poor neighbourhoods surrounding these islands of extreme luxury. These new developments on the outskirts of Lisbon are a legacy of the World Expo in Lisbon 1998. Much of the area in which these futuristic monuments were built was run down, poor and undeveloped. There were many small farms. Shantytowns took over much of these abandoned territories over 30 years ago. With these new areas now targeting redevelopment and gentrification, many private developers and local government want to reclaim these lands. Accelerated urbanisation. This shift from a relatively backward agricultural economy to an advanced urban capitalism has been a relatively recent and very rapid shift in Portugal. This has occurred since the 1970s. Slogan, I saw a slogan I captured. We need to reinvent the territory. This is one of the slogans in the gleaming new developments. Off the map. We passed through the huge white city of glass and towers on the way to find Amashuera. We stopped off for lunch. We were lost. Amashuera, like nearly all shantytowns, are off the map. They're invisible, lost, submerged in liminal spaces. For most Lisbonites, they exist only in the New Read newspaper headlines and TV news reports about the crime wave, so-called crime wave, and threat to decent people that purportedly emanates from them. It took us at least 2 hours to find this space. On the way, we stopped to ask people. We assumed that were locals and knew the space well. Most have heard of it, but didn't even know how to get there. As I gazed out the car window, I caught a glimpse of a sign above a shabby-looking small cafe. It read, "Snack Bar Paradise." Amashuera, a new community housing project built originally to provide low-cost housing for Portuguese young people and low-income families. More recently, these developments have been occupied by mainly African, Cape Verde, Angola and Mozambique, immigrants and gypsy communities who were relocated from adjacent shanty towns. There's a large presence of evangelical church activity in these deprived areas. My general impression of the space was one of it being one of a space of desolation, isolation, a failed modernity, a wasteland. It's a non-space. It has almost no urban amenities, parks, squares, open public spaces. Its geography consists of a number of huge super barrier blocks arranging rows, linear avenues, top of the hill. The main social space, I hesitate to use the term public space, are linear streets and avenues. At one end of the main street is a huge monstrous chapel-like building that points upwards to the sky, probably a prestige or homage to Le Corbusier's chapel at Longchamp. This, we were told, was originally built as a cultural centre for the gypsy community, but has since been largely abandoned and rarely used. People, particularly young people, sit around in groups on the street, watching, waiting, watching each other, waiting for whom, for what, for something to happen. Time seems to have frozen in Amashuera. Nothing happens, nothing moves. Everything is flat and still. There's an abundance of space. Space dominates everything. Everything is flat and still. Spaces overlap each other in linear rows that seem to lead to nowhere and generate no activity, apart from children playing in the street. Time and space are out of kilter in this place. The time is out of joint, to quote Derrida, quoting Shakespeare's Hamlet. This is not Lisbon time, or even urban time, it has its own indecipherable, mostly sealed spatial logic and chronology. Concurrently, the space is overdetermined, overlapping, folding on itself. All you can do to the space is wait and look. There's little spatial, temporal, or cultural material in which to create coherent, meaningful social trajectories. Urban navigations are useless in this space because there's nothing to navigate to or from. It's an urbanism of biopolitical stasis, designed to contain and render non-mobile those docile occupants, not citizens. If the time is out of joint and the space is folded in on itself, where can you go? What can you do? Nothing. Nada. Zero. Terminality. The end product inevitably is a population turned in on itself. Violence becomes the language of social mediation, interstitiation, the negation of negation. Paradoxically, this eventually can be a means of escape, an unwitting mode of resistance, the only way the wretches of the earth can resist the urban regime or biopolitical stasis. Question: what role can contemporary art play in this situation? What models exist for artists working in local communities? Can the artist's role be that of the ethnographer or the anthropologist, trying to understand the other? And who is the other in this situation? Day 3, visit the Kinton Victoria shantytown. Kinton Victoria is the appearance of a typical shantytown. The housing units are self-erected assemblage of corrugated iron and concrete, patched together in irregular, huddled spaces. Streets, or rather the spaces between the buildings that one to negotiate carefully, through piles of debris, bricks, piles of rubbish, exposed pipes, household waste, open mini sewers. Kinton Victoria is a space in transition. As in most of the shanty towns, apart from the really established communities such as Toulouse and Cockatoo, many of the buildings are half demolished or under threat of being demolished. These buildings have been marked or painted with an X or a 0. It's as if the city planners were playing a game of noughts and crosses with the residents to determine the order of destruction. Surrounding the shantytown are barrier blocks, a landscape of social housing. The shantytown sits below in a small valley while the social housing blocks sit above it, gleaming and shining on a hill above. One would think that living in the shantytown conditions of absolute urban bare life, the residents would look longingly up to the shining dream house on the hill and want to escape up the ladder of social mobility into the dream house of the urban community. But in the conversation with some of the social workers and residents who gave us a tour of the community, a very different, less linear and more complex picture emerged. I'll skip that bit there. Question. This raises questions about the environmental or spatial determinism that geographers, architects, and urbanists have debated for decades. To what extent are many of the problems of urban alienation caused by the designs and interventions of architects and planners? Police racism. The community worker stated that police routinely targeted black cafes, so-called black cafes, in the shantytowns for raids and physical harassment. Artists in shantytowns. Very few artists have engaged with the shanties. Filmmaking journalists have worked in a few of these areas, such as Peter da Costa and Goodwin and Iniva. Airport. Many of the shanties are located near the airport. The noise of aircraft and the sight of low-flying airplanes coming to land or taking off is a constant presence in the background of these places, a part of the local landscape. Military roads. One of the main roads that connects these shanty towns is the old military road. The geography of the shanties are thus inscribed in a prior history of military mapping and use of space, a kind of military urbanism. All shanty towns are not the same. Shanty towns are not homogeneous. They're populated by individuals as well as communities. They contain many different cultures, identities, and attitudes towards living in shanty towns. Many dream of escape. Some want to stay in the shanty as a safe haven. Many shanty dwellers occupy several spaces and identities in between the shanties and the city. Many shanty residents have families in the city and spend time there. The separation between the shanty and the city is artificial, fluid, and not stable. Shanty town dwellers can be urbanites as well as residents of shanty towns. Many shanty town dwellers dressed like urban dandies, Portuguese versions of French African urban sapeur. Some shanty towns are better organised than others. Toulouse and Cockatoo are of an entirely different scale, order, and permanency within the urban tissue than places like Kinton Victoria and Fundimundo. Shanty towns are liminal zones, occupying an impossible space between the city and the periphery. They're ghostly assemblages of people, iron, concrete, and dreams. Shantytown dwellers face more than one way at the same time. One way leads to the city, the other leads to the sea or the airport.